For the last 30 years, the world's been told one consistent story. It's a story of unstoppable momentum, of gleaming skyscrapers rising from dust, high-speed trains carving through mountains, and a military marching relentlessly into the future. We've been told to get ready for a Chinese century, a new global order with Beijing at its very center. But that's not the real story. The real story is that the engine of this empire is sputtering. And it's not because of some external rival or a grand geopolitical showdown. It's a silent, internal pattern, a series of interconnected crises that are grinding Beijing's global ambitions to a halt from the inside out. While everyone has been watching China's warships, they've missed the economic time bomb quietly ticking at home. Let's dive into the revelation, a dream deferred. The grand narrative of China's inevitable rise is colliding with a harsh reality. A reality so stark that even Beijing can't ignore it anymore. While official growth targets like the recent one of around 4.5 to 5% are high for any other major economy, they signal a clear downshift from the gravity-defying, double-digit growth that once defined the country. This isn't just a number, it's an admission that the era of explosive growth is over. The dream of global dominance, fueled by an economic miracle, is facing its biggest threat yet. This threat isn't a single event. It's a pattern, a doom loop woven from three distinct, yet deeply connected domestic crises. First, there's the concrete cage. A property market that once built the dream is now burying it in debt. Second, the consumption black hole. A population of 1.4 billion people who are saving instead of spending, starving the economy of its most vital fuel. And third, the demographic time bomb. A slow-motion crisis of empty cradles and a shrinking workforce that no amount of central planning can reverse. This is the pattern that's quietly breaking China's empire dreams. A pattern of internal decay that means China's biggest enemy isn't in Washington, but within its own borders. Talking of the concrete cage. To understand China's slowdown, you have to start with the property sector. For decades, it was the rocket fuel of the economy. At its peak, real estate and related industries were estimated to make up a staggering 20 to 30% of the entire country's GDP. It was more than an industry. It was the primary savings vehicle for the nation's middle class. But since 2021, this engine has been in a brutal, prolonged slump. The numbers paint a terrifying picture. Across the country, some reports point to a massive inventory of unsold housing. Debated estimates from some analysts suggest there could be tens of millions of vacant properties, enough empty homes to house the entire population of Germany. These aren't just empty apartments. They are vast, under-occupied developments, sometimes called ghost cities, that stand as monuments to a broken growth model. Home prices, after years of defying gravity, have been in a steady correction with no bottom in sight. This matters immensely because somewhere between 60 and 70% of the average Chinese family's wealth is tied up in real estate. As the value of their homes declines, so does their confidence, their spending power, and their faith in the future. This crisis goes far beyond individual homeowners. It has created a fiscal black hole for local governments. For years in many parts of the country, they relied on selling land to developers for as much as 40% of their revenue. With developers now going bankrupt, like the spectacular implosion of Evergrande, that fire hose of cash has been turned off. In its place is a mountain of debt that some institutions have warned is approaching the size of the nation's entire annual GDP. They are now trapped, forced to borrow more money just to pay the interest on what they already owe. This isn't growth, it's a debt spiral, and it leads directly to the next piece of the pattern. Ever heard of the consumption black hole? When your life savings locked in a concrete apartment are losing value and your local government is drowning in debt, you don't go shopping. You save. This is the heart of China's consumption black hole. Despite its rising middle class, China has one of the highest household savings rates in the world. This isn't a cultural quirk. It's a rational response to a system with a notoriously weak social safety net. Chinese citizens save obsessively for healthcare, their children's education, and for retirement, because they can't rely on the state to provide an adequate cushion. This deep-seated economic insecurity creates a paradox, an economy that can't rely on its own people to consume. The government is aware of the problem and has rolled out some measures to encourage spending. But these efforts are overshadowed by a much larger strategic priority: high-tech manufacturing and exports. Beijing's master plan, laid out in its current 14th five-year plan, isn't to build a consumer paradise. It's to dominate the industries of the future, AI, robotics, and green technology, and sell those products to the rest of the world. This makes the economy dangerously dependent on external demand at a time of rising geopolitical tensions and trade tariffs. It's a strategy that prioritizes producers over consumers, state power over household wealth. And while the government hopes this will lead to self-reliance, it also leaves the domestic economy fragile and underpowered, starved of the organic, internal demand it needs to be truly resilient. But even this export-driven plan is now colliding with a force that is far more powerful and far harder to solve. Talking of the demographic time bomb, the final and perhaps most destructive element of the pattern is demographics. For decades, China benefited from a demographic dividend, a massive young workforce that powered its factories and built its cities. That dividend has now officially expired. Thanks to the lingering effects of the one-child policy, China's population has entered what appears to be a long-term decline, with the birth rate hitting record lows. The workforce is now shrinking every single year. This isn't a problem for the distant future. It's happening right now. It's a key factor driving up labor costs and eroding China's competitive edge as the world's factory. This demographic decline is giving rise to the 4-2-1 problem, an emerging family structure where a single child is becoming responsible for supporting 2 parents and 4 grandparents. This places an almost unbearable financial and emotional strain on the younger generation, further crushing consumer confidence and spending. The pressure on the state is just as intense. Projections from some experts warn that without significant reforms, China's national pension fund could run out of money entirely by 2035. The government knows this and is slowly trying to raise the retirement age, but it's a deeply unpopular move that only treats a symptom of a much deeper disease. You simply can't build a dynamic, growing economy on a shrinking foundation of people. Fewer workers, fewer consumers, and a rapidly aging population create a structural headwind that no amount of government stimulus can fully overcome. Let's look into the implication of the broken engine of empire together. So how does this internal pattern of decay shatter China's empire dreams? An empire, whether it's economic or military, runs on surplus. It requires a massive surplus of capital, resources, confidence, and dynamic growth to project power globally. China's internal crises are systematically draining that surplus away. The colossal sums of money required for globe-spanning projects like the Belt and Road Initiative now have to compete with the urgent need to bail out local governments, stabilize the property market, and fund a pension system on the brink of crisis. While BRI engagement has recently hit record levels, the question becomes one of sustainability. Ambitions for global influence are now weighed against the pressing and incredibly expensive need for stability at home. We are already seeing hints of this recalibration. While China's defense budget continues to grow, the rate of that growth has moderated from its peak years. It's not a retreat, but it is an acknowledgement of new constraints. The pivot to dominating high-tech exports isn't just a play for future power, it's a survival tactic. It's a desperate search for a new growth engine now that the old property and infrastructure model is fundamentally broken. This is the quiet implosion at the heart of the Chinese dream. Beijing's grand strategy is being undermined not by an external enemy, but by the very economic model that once made it seem invincible. The foundations are cracking, an economy weighed down by debt, dependent on nervous savers rather than confident spenders, and facing a demographic winter cannot afford the price of a global empire. The empire dream isn't being defeated, it's being defunded from within. For years, the world has been watching China's horizon, looking for signs of conflict, waiting for the moment its external ambitions would clash with the existing world order. But we were looking in the wrong direction. The most significant story of the 21st century may not be China's rise, but its struggle against a powerful internal pattern of economic gravity. The dream of a Chinese century is being quietly dismantled, not by foreign rivals, but by empty homes, empty cradles, and a crisis of confidence at home. What does a world look like where China is forced to turn inward, focusing on its own immense problems rather than projecting power outward? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this analysis valuable, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching.